For more, we'll cross to our Ukraine correspondent, Gulliver Cragg in Kyiv. Hi, Gulliver. So people have actually been calling for Yermak to go ever since this corruption scandal broke, even before it. Why is that?
Yes, a lot of people had been saying that the only way for Volodymyr Zelenskiy to get public support back after this corruption scandal broke 2 weeks ago would be to ditch Andriy Yermak. But for a long time, it looked as though he was absolutely refusing to do that. He even made Andriy Yermak the head of the recent delegation that went to Geneva for talks with the Americans and three European countries about this latest so-called peace plan proposal. But after the search of Andriy Yermak's property this morning, I guess the feeling was that the game was up. Although the chief of staff was not served with any notice of suspicion by the anti-corruption investigators, what they've published so far in terms of recordings already reveals if the person who is called Ali Baba on the recordings is Andriy Yermak, which everybody seems to think is the case, that Andriy Yermak was very much involved. Whether profiting from this corruption scheme or not, it's not entirely clear, but certainly involved in efforts to prevent the anti-corruption agencies from doing their work and from uncovering what they have now uncovered. There's a huge amount of anger against Andriy Yermak, not just because of corruption, but also because of the outsized role that he was playing. His job title, Chief of Staff, belies a much, much more important role that he played in Ukrainian politics. Often he appeared to be acting as foreign minister and vice president. He was always at Volodymyr Zelenskyy's side, and also he was naming people close to him to all key positions and getting rid of those who he thought of as rivals. So this concentration of power in Andriy Yermak's hands has been something that's been much criticized by the political opposition, by the media for many months now.
Gulliver, these are also not the only corruption allegations that we've seen under Zelensky's presidency. Again, all of this, creating somewhat of a distraction amid these very crucial peace negotiations.
Absolutely. Anti-corruption media, and to some extent, I think the anti-corruption institutions, at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, certainly eased off on their criticisms of the government, on their investigations, thinking that these kinds of things would harm Ukraine, would harm the national interest, and everybody had to pull together, and that dealing with corruption could be done later. At some point, though, the level of corruption that was perceived and that was revealed by some smaller investigations, I think, led these people to think that the harm done by money being stolen, the harm done by Ukraine possibly not meeting the criteria for joining the European Union, if it wasn't able to show that its anti-corruption institutions were working, led to a change of heart and led to a lot more revelation. So we've already had investigations in the media about corruption, for example, in the construction of defences, which has a direct impact on the war when the money that's supposed to be allocated for building these huge kind of trench systems to protect Ukrainian territory from further Russian advances is not actually spent where it is done, then that can really be deadly. And so people started to get more and more concerned about this. There's all the same, a lot of debate in Ukraine about how much these corruption scandals coming out harm the country's international position, harm the country's image, more than the amounts of money being stolen actually harm the war effort and so on. Because if you look at the latest corruption scandal, for example, what's been published so far concerns $100 million that was stolen by being paid in kickbacks from the national nuclear power company. That's not a huge amount of money when you think that one Rafale jet, of which Ukraine is apparently going to buy 100 from France, costs more than that. But the thing is that people think that this is actually the tip of the iceberg. What's been revealed publicly by the anti-corruption institutions is only a small part of it. And also action against the anti-corruption institutions and the jailing of one of their detectives on what activists say are trumped up charges is also something that made a lot of Ukrainians think this has got to stop. Something's really got to be done to stamp down on this corruption now.
Gulliver Cragg in Kyiv, thank you very much.